My wife forgot to turn off her location. At least, that's what I thought. Then, I drove to the place where her phone said she was and found my own name written on a locked door. Underneath it were 3 words: "Ask your wife." I should have turned around. I should have gone home. Instead, I found a key taped behind the note, and when I opened that door, I discovered photographs of my house, copies of my bank records, a forged signature, and a photograph of my wife standing beside a man I'd never seen before. That's when I realized this wasn't about an affair. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been building a case against me, and somehow my wife was part of it. My name is Grant Holloway. I'm 36 years old, and for almost 8 years I thought I had a normal marriage. My wife Tessa and I weren't one of those couples who posted perfect pictures online or acted like we never argued. We were normal. We worked, we paid bills, we complained about grocery prices, we fought over stupid things, we laughed about even stupider things, and most nights we went to bed believing tomorrow would look a lot like today. Then, about 6 months before that night, Tessa changed. Not enough for me to accuse her of anything, just enough for me to notice. She started putting her phone face down. She changed her passcode. She took calls outside. She started coming home later. And whenever I asked what was going on, she gave me the same answer: nothing. At first, I believed her. Then I started noticing how quickly she said it. Why were you crying? Nothing. Why were you sitting in the driveway? Nothing. Why are you suddenly locking your phone? She would look at me. You don't trust me? That question always stopped me because I didn't want to become the husband who checked his wife's phone every night. I didn't want to follow her. I didn't want to become suspicious of every late meeting or missed call. So I did what people do when they're afraid of an answer. I convinced myself there was no question. I went to work. I paid the mortgage. I fixed things around the house. I walked our dog. I kissed my wife goodnight, and I told myself marriage wasn't supposed to feel exciting all the time. But something had changed. I just didn't know what. Then came Thursday night. It was around 8:40. I was sitting on the couch watching a basketball game when Tessa walked into the living room wearing her coat. I need to run out for a little while. I looked at the clock. Everything okay? Yeah. She grabbed her keys. I'll be back in an hour. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, nothing strange about it, except it felt practiced, like she had already rehearsed it. I remember looking at her for a second longer than usual. You sure you're okay? I'm fine, Grant. Then she left. The front door closed. I turned back toward the television. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the notification. Tessa's location had updated. I stared at the screen. We had shared locations for years. It wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that Tessa had turned hers off months earlier. That night, it was back on. I opened the notification. Her blue dot was across town, at an old commercial property. I knew the building. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. It had been empty for years. Boarded windows, broken sign, no businesses. No reason for my wife to be there. I checked the timestamp. She had arrived 7 minutes earlier. My stomach tightened. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I sat there staring at her location. And then I had a thought I wish I could forget. What if she was meeting another man? I hated myself for thinking it, but once the thought entered my head, it brought 10 more behind it. Maybe she had been seeing someone for months? Maybe that explained the phone, the late nights, the secrecy, the tears? Maybe our marriage had already ended and I was the last person to know. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and drove. I didn't speed. I didn't want to arrive angry. I wanted to arrive knowing exactly what was happening. 23 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot. Tessa's car was there. No other cars, no restaurant, no hotel, no crowded parking lot. Just her car sitting alone beneath a dead security light. I got out. The driver's door was unlocked. That bothered me. Tessa never left her car unlocked. I walked toward the building. That's when I saw the paper. It was taped to a metal door. I took another step, then another. My flashlight caught the writing. Grant Holloway. My name. I stopped breathing for a second. Underneath it were 3 words. Ask your wife. I actually laughed. It wasn't because anything was funny. It was the kind of laugh that escapes when your brain doesn't know what else to do. Oh no. I pulled the paper off the door. The door was locked. I tried the handle. Nothing. Then I noticed something behind the paper. A small brass key. I stared at it. I should have walked away. Instead, I put the key in the lock. It turned. The door opened. The smell hit me first. Dust, old concrete, something metallic. The building was completely dark. I turned on my flashlight and stepped inside. There was a narrow hallway. At the end was an office. The door was already open. Inside was a folding table. On the table were several folders and a laptop. I walked closer. The first folder had my name on it, Grant Holloway. My hands were already shaking when I opened it. The first thing I saw was a photograph, my house, taken from across the street. I turned the page. Another photograph, my car. Another, my office. Another, my driveway. Then my front door. I stopped. Someone had been watching me. Not for a day, not for a week, possibly for months. I opened another section. Bank statements, property records, copies of emails, credit applications. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten. A photograph of Tessa. She was standing beside a man, late 40s, gray hair, dark jacket, cold expression. I didn't recognize him. Under the photograph was a name, Calder Voss. I turned the page. There were bank transfers, thousands of dollars, money moving between accounts I didn't recognize. One account belonged to Tessa. I felt something crack inside me. Not because I thought she was having an affair. That suddenly seemed almost irrelevant. My wife wasn't hiding a man. She was hiding something much bigger. I kept reading. Then I found a copy of our mortgage. My name was highlighted, so was Tessa's. But beside my name, someone had written 2 words, primary target. I stared at them. What the hell? Then I heard something, a sound from the hallway. I froze. Someone was there. I turned off my flashlight. Nothing. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then, bang, a door slammed somewhere behind me. I ran into the hallway. Tessa? Nothing. I stepped outside. Her car was still there, but I could hear an engine. I looked behind the building. A black SUV was pulling away. I couldn't see the driver, but I saw the plate. I memorized the last 4 numbers. Then my phone rang. Tessa. I answered immediately. Where are you? Silence. Tessa. Her voice finally came through. Very quiet. You weren't supposed to go there. What is that place? Go home, Grant. No. Please. Tell me what Calder Voss has to do with you. Silence. Then I heard her crying. I can't explain this over the phone. Then explain it to my face. Another pause. Then she whispered 2 words. I'm sorry. The call ended.
I stood there with the phone against my ear, and for the first time that night, I wasn't wondering whether my wife was cheating on me. I was wondering whether I was in danger. I drove home. I didn't sleep. At 1:17 in the morning, I heard the front door open. Tessa walked into the kitchen. She saw me sitting at the table. Then she saw the folder. Her face went white. She didn't ask where I had been. She didn't ask what I had found. She simply whispered, "Where did you get that?" I looked at her. "That's your question?" She sat down. Her hands were shaking. "Grant, who is Calder?" She looked down. "My father's business partner. Your father died 9 years ago." "I know."
Then why is his business partner still involved in our lives? She swallowed. He wasn't just my father's business partner. I waited. She finally looked at me. He was involved in something illegal. The room went silent. Tessa told me her father had owned a small construction supply company. Years ago, the company was struggling. Calder offered money, loans, investments, connections, but the money wasn't clean. Some had been stolen from clients. Some had been moved through shell companies. Some had been used to purchase properties under other people's names, including ours. I stared at her. "What do you mean, including ours?" She couldn't look at me. "Our house. What about it?" "It's complicated." "No, it's actually pretty simple." I pointed at the folder. "You knew?" She nodded. "How long?" 8 months. I laughed. 8 months. She had known for 8 months. 8 months of sleeping beside me. 8 months of telling me everything was fine. 8 months of saying nothing. "You lied to me every day." "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From Calder." I opened the folder. "Then why am I marked as the primary target?" She looked at the page, and that's when I noticed something. She wasn't surprised by the words. She was terrified of them. "Tessa." She wiped her eyes. "Calder thinks you found the records." "I didn't even know the records existed." "I know. Then why does he think I did?" She didn't answer. "Tessa?" Her voice broke. "Because I told him you had them." I couldn't speak. "What?" "I had to." "You told him I had evidence?" "I was trying to buy time." "You used me as bait?" "I didn't know what else to do." "You could have told me." "I was scared." "So you made me the target?" She stood up. "I was trying to keep you alive." "And how exactly does lying to your husband keep him alive?" She had no answer. I grabbed my jacket. She reached for my arm. "Grant, please!" I pulled away. Then she slapped me. The sound echoed through the kitchen. We both froze. She covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" I looked at her, and something inside me went completely quiet. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. "Don't ever touch me again." I walked out. That night I stayed at a hotel, but I didn't spend the night thinking about revenge. I spent it thinking about survival. The next morning I called an attorney. His name was Everett Shaw. I gave him everything: the photographs, the bank records, the mortgage, the note, the documents from the building. He read through everything without saying much. Then he looked up. "Grant, this isn't a marriage problem." "What is it?" "Financial fraud." My stomach dropped.
He explained that if Calder had been moving stolen money through properties, shell companies, and fake accounts, my house could be part of the evidence. Worse, if someone had used my identity without my knowledge, they could try to make me responsible for debts I never created. I looked at him. Can they take my house? Possibly. Can they put me in prison? If someone forged documents in your name and created enough evidence to make it look legitimate? He paused. Yes. I leaned back. What do I do? You don't confront Calder. Okay? You don't contact him. Fine. And you don't tell your wife everything we're doing. That one hurt. Why? Because right now we don't know whether she's protecting you or protecting herself. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I was asking myself the same question. For the next 3 weeks, I went home. I spoke to Tessa. I ate dinner at the same table. I acted like I was still trying to save our marriage. But I was lying. For the first time in 8 years, I was the one keeping secrets. Everett started digging. And what he found made me sick. There were credit applications in my name. I'd never submitted them. There was a company registered under my identity. I'd never heard of it. There was a business bank account. I'd never opened it. Then he found a property in Nevada. My name was attached to it. I'd never even been there. But the worst discovery came on a Friday afternoon. Everett slid a document across his desk. Look at the signature. I stared at it. It was mine. Or at least, it looked like mine. The loan was for $480,000. I shook my head. I didn't sign this. I know. Then who did? Everett placed another document beside it, a handwriting comparison. Then he pointed at the signature. Tessa's handwriting. My blood ran cold. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Hey, did you sign a loan agreement in my name? Silence. Tessa? Nothing. Did you? Her voice finally came. Yes. I closed my eyes. Why? I was trying to buy time. You forged my signature. I know. You could have sent me to prison. I know. What did Calder have on you? She started crying. My father left a debt. How much? Almost $600,000. I sat down. She continued. Calder said if I didn't cooperate, he'd expose everything my father had done. So you chose me? No. You did. I thought I could fix it. You didn't fix anything. I know. There was a long silence. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. Did you ever love me? She didn't answer. Not immediately. Then she whispered, Yes. I believed her. And somehow, that hurt more. Because if she had never loved me, everything would have been easier. But she did. And she still betrayed me. I told Everett everything. He listened. Then he said something I didn't expect. We don't need to destroy Calder ourselves. I looked at him. We need to make Calder destroy himself. That was the first time I understood what revenge could actually look like. Not screaming, not violence, not revenge for the sake of revenge. Evidence. We needed evidence. Everett created a plan. We would let Calder believe I was frightened. We would let him believe I didn't understand what was happening. Then we'd give him exactly what he wanted, a way to control the house. A document would be created, showing that I was considering transferring ownership, but it wouldn't be real. It would be bait. And it worked. 48 hours later, Calder's attorney contacted me. They offered me $40,000. $40,000 for my interest in a house worth nearly $500,000. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked one question. Why is Calder so desperate for this property? The attorney went silent. That silence told Everett everything he needed to know. The property wasn't valuable because of the house, it was valuable because of what was hidden in its history. Old transfers, fake companies, money that had moved through the property, names that shouldn't have been connected. The house wasn't the prize, the house was evidence, and Calder was desperate to erase it. Then Everett found another connection. The old commercial building, the one where I'd found the files. It wasn't abandoned by accident. It had belonged to one of Calder's shell companies, and the files inside weren't there for me to randomly discover. Someone had put them there. Someone had expected me to find them. I immediately thought of Tessa, but Everett stopped me. Don't confront her yet. Why? Because if she planted those files, we need to know why, and if Calder planted them, then we need to know why he wanted you to see them. That question kept me awake. Who had left that note? Who had put the key behind it? And why did they know I'd follow Tessa's location? Then Everett found something, a security recording, from the building across the street, the night I arrived. There was Tessa. She had entered the building 20 minutes before I got there, but she wasn't alone. She was carrying a small envelope, and before she left, she looked directly toward the security camera. Everett paused the video. I stared at the screen. Zoom in. He did. Tessa was holding her phone, and on the screen was my name. I felt cold. She hadn't accidentally turned her location on. She had done it deliberately. But why? Before I could answer that question, Everett found another video. The black SUV. It had arrived 6 minutes after me. The driver got out. He entered the building. Then he left less than 4 minutes later. The license plate matched the numbers I'd memorized. It belonged to Calder. He had followed me. That changed everything. Tessa hadn't just wanted me to find the evidence.
She had wanted Calder to believe I had found it. She was forcing him to react, and if he reacted, he would expose himself. Everett contacted the investigators. We set everything in motion. Then we waited. 3 days later, Calder made his move. He demanded a meeting, not with Everett, with me. I agreed, but I wasn't alone. Everett was there. Investigators were waiting nearby, and every conversation was being recorded legally. Calder walked into the room wearing an expensive suit. He looked completely relaxed, like he owned the building, like he owned me. He sat across from me, then smiled. "You've made this much harder than it needed to be." I looked at him. "No." I pushed a folder across the table. "You did." He opened it. His smile disappeared. Inside were copies of the transactions, the shell companies, the fake accounts, the property transfers, the forged documents, and finally, a statement from Tessa. Calder slowly looked up. "Where did you get this?" I didn't answer. He looked across the room. Tessa was standing near the investigators. His face changed. "You betrayed me." Tessa said nothing. I looked at him. "No." He turned toward me. I leaned forward. "She betrayed me." His expression hardened, and I made sure you couldn't use her to destroy me. For the first time, Calder looked afraid. The investigators stepped forward. He tried to stand. They stopped him. He was taken into custody that afternoon. The investigation lasted almost a year. Calder eventually pleaded guilty. His businesses were seized. His properties were seized. Millions of dollars were recovered. But Tessa's story wasn't as simple. She had participated. She had forged my signature. She had lied to me. She had helped Calder.
but she also gave investigators evidence, and eventually she agreed to cooperate fully. She still faced consequences, she still had to answer for what she had done, and our marriage was over. There was no miracle reconciliation, no dramatic kiss, no second wedding. Some things don't get repaired, some things get survived. Tessa moved out. I kept the house, and for months I hated being there. Every room reminded me of something. The kitchen reminded me of the night she slapped me. The living room reminded me of the night I first saw her location. The driveway reminded me of all the times she had sat there alone. But slowly, the house became mine again. Not legally, emotionally. I stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. I stopped waking up at every sound. I stopped wondering whether every phone call was another lie. Then, almost a year after that first night, I received a letter, no return address. Inside was a photograph, the old building, the same building where I'd found my name on the door. I turned it over. There was writing on the back, "You were never the target." I stared at those words. Then I found another page. It was a copy of the investigator's final report.
And buried near the bottom was something I'd never been told. The location notification that night wasn't an accident. Tessa had turned it on purpose. She knew I would see it. She knew I would follow it. She knew I'd open that door. And she knew I'd take the evidence to someone who could protect me. But there was something else. She hadn't turned the location on because she wanted me to catch her. She turned it on because she wanted Calder to believe I had caught her. That difference changed everything. Because Calder had been watching her, and when he saw my car arrive at that building, he thought I had discovered the entire operation, so he followed me. He entered the building after I left. He searched for the files. He panicked, and in his panic, he made mistakes. Mistakes investigators could finally prove. Tessa had known she couldn't fight him directly. She couldn't safely take the evidence to the police. She couldn't simply walk away, and she couldn't tell me the truth without putting me in greater danger. So she did something terrible. She made me angry enough to investigate her. She made me suspicious enough to follow the location. She made Calder believe I had discovered everything. And then she let his fear do the rest. I read the report 3 times. Then I found the final page, a note written by Tessa. It said, "I knew Grant would hate me for what I did, but if I told him the truth, Calder would kill him. I needed Grant angry enough to investigate me. I needed Calder afraid enough to make a mistake." I put the paper down. For the first time, I understood why she had looked so terrified that night. She wasn't afraid I'd discover an affair. She was afraid I'd discover what she had done to save me. And somehow, she had still managed to destroy the life she was trying to protect. A year later, I stood outside the courthouse. Calder walked out in handcuffs. I watched him disappear into a waiting vehicle. Across the street stood Tessa. We looked at each other. Neither of us moved. She finally crossed the street. She stopped a few feet away. "I know you may never forgive me." I didn't answer. She reached into her purse. Then she handed me a small envelope. I opened it. Inside was the original photograph from the old building, the one with my name on the door. I turned it over. There were 3 words written on the back. Not "ask your wife," not "I'm sorry." 3 different words. "I'm finally free." I looked up. Tessa was crying, and for a second I wanted to tell her everything was okay. But it wasn't. What she had done wasn't okay. What I had gone through wasn't okay. And forgiveness didn't mean pretending it never happened. So I simply nodded. She nodded back. Then she walked away.
I stood there watching her disappear into the crowd, and I realized something. Revenge isn't always about watching the person who hurt you suffer. Sometimes revenge is much quieter. It's getting your name back, your home back, your future back, your peace back. It's waking up one morning and realizing the person who tried to destroy your life no longer controls a single thought in your head. I drove home that night alone. I pulled into my driveway, walked through the front door, and stood in the kitchen. The same kitchen where my marriage had nearly ended. The same kitchen where I had once believed my wife was my enemy. I looked around, and for the first time, the house felt peaceful. I turned off the lights, locked the door, walked upstairs, and slept. No checking the windows, no checking my phone, no wondering who was watching, just sleep. For the first time in almost a year. And maybe that's the part nobody tells you about betrayal. The hardest part isn't discovering the truth, it's learning how to live after it. Because someone else's worst decision doesn't have to become the definition of your life. They can lie to you, they can betray you, they can steal years from you, but they don't get to steal the years you haven't lived yet. Take your name back, take your peace back, take your future back. And when the truth finally comes, let it speak for itself. Because sometimes the truth doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes you have to drive straight to it.